Welcome to Gossip Media, guys. We have sad news today. Please stay tuned. Actor Gene Hackman dies from heart disease and Alzheimer's. Wife Betsy Arakawa dies from hantavirus.
When Gene Hackman registered for the acting class at the Pasadena Playhouse, he was discouraged by fellow classmates, saying that he started too late at the age of 30 and didn't have the looks of a leading man. Gene's answer years later was, "I didn't come to train to be a movie star. I trained to be an actor." Eugene Allen Hackman has earned 2 Academy Awards. He's been nominated 5 times. He has 4 Golden Globes and 1 Screen Actors Guild Award and numerous other accolades. Kevin Costner said that Gene Hackman was the best actor he had ever worked with. The actor was born January 30th, 1930 in San Bernardino, California, to Eugene Ezra Hackman and wife Lydia Elizabeth Gray. After Gene's birth, the family will move around for a few years, finally settling at 2101 Cannon Street in Danville, Illinois, at the home of Gene's maternal grandparents. Gene's dad got a job at the local paper, the Commercial News, as a printing press operator, and Gene recounted a story that when he was 5 years old, he would sometimes wander into the backyard of a sweet lady who, when she seen him, would always bring him cookies to eat. One day, he remembered seeing several police cars at her house. After that, he didn't remember seeing her anymore. Later, as he got older, he learned that the lady's husband had shot and killed her, and then shot himself. It was determined that the man crawled around inside the house for 3 days before dying. It bothered Gene for years growing up, and he said he thought of her and her kindness often. This is Gene with his family at the age of 8. He remembered at the age of 10 his mother telling him that she would someday like to see him in movies. That same year, on March 8, 1940, Gene's parents had a baby boy. They named Richard Lee Hackman. Richard will enter the movie business like his older brother, but in later life, Richard preferred to live a much quieter life. In 1943, when Gene was 13 and Richard was 3, their dad, Eugene Ezra, left the family without a word to his boys. He only waved goodbye as he left. They would still see him on occasion, but he was no longer a part of the family. Gene and Robert was raised mostly by their grandmother, Beatrice Gray. Their mother's drinking habits got worse after her divorce. He remembered fondly his mother's love for movies and her taking him to see his favorite movie star, James Cagney. Gene attended Danville High School, and his sophomore year he attended Storm Lake High School for a short time. Gene had troubled teenage years, once being arrested for stealing candy and Cokes. Having trouble with his high school basketball coach caused him to drop out of school, and for a brief time going to work at a local steel mill. Hackman was desperate to find a way to live, and at the age of 16, he lied about his age and was able to join the Marine Corps. He was assigned as a field radio operator and sent to Shanghai, China. After the communists took over, he was reassigned to Japan and Hawaii. He said he had a problem with authority and was busted several times, but he did manage to pass his high school equivalency test. In 1951, his enlistment was up and he was discharged. After service, he returned back to Danville for a short time. Taking advantage of the GI Bill, he registered at the University of Illinois to study journalism and television productions. And during this period, Gene also worked odd jobs as a radio announcer, a shoe salesman, and a truck driver. In 1955, he met Faye Maltese while attending a New York YMCA dance. She was a bank clerk, and the two hit it off right away. They'll marry on January 1st, 1956. He was 25 and she was 28. By 1956, Hackman had decided to become an actor with full support of his new wife. He entered classes at the Pasadena Playhouse in California, also using the GI Bill. At the Playhouse, Gene had met another outcast actor, Dustin Hoffman. The two was voted by classmates as the most unlikely to succeed. Gene was almost 30, too late to start a career, and he was married. Hoffman was too short to be successful. Hackman received the lowest score ever given by the Playhouse. Gene will soon leave the Playhouse and return to New York to try his hand on stage with summer stock and off-Broadway. Hoffman will return to New York after finishing classes. he moved in the one-bedroom apartment at 2nd Avenue and 26th Street with Hackman and his wife. Hoffman slept on the kitchen floor. Gene said that Hoffman was only going to stay a few days, but didn't want to leave. He had to finally take him by the hand and lead him apartment hunting. Hackman remembered working as a doorman, one of his menial jobs that he held while trying to get his acting career started, and he was embarrassed when he opened the door for a Marine officer that had once told Hackman, "Hackman, you're a S.O.B." On January the 1st, 1960, Dean and Faye had a baby boy they named Christopher Allen Hackman. Christopher will grow up and stay in show business behind the scenes, and will also become a writer of computer software. In May 1961, Gene will perform as an unaccredited policeman in a fantasized gangster movie named Mad Dog Cole. And the next year, on August the 19th, 1962, Gene and Faye will have their second child, a daughter, Elizabeth Jean. Elizabeth will grow up trying to keep her life mostly private and out of the public eye. 4 months after the birth of their daughter, Gene will be shocked to find out that his mother, Lottie, had passed away on December the 30th, 1962. She had gone to sleep while smoking in bed and was unable to get out. Lottie Elizabeth was 57 years old. Gene said that his biggest regret was that his mother never got to see him on the big screen. In 1964, Gene will be cast as the young suitor in the Broadway play Any Wednesday with Sandy Dennis. This role will lead him to be cast as Norman in 1964 film Lydiath that starred Warren Beatty. On 9 October 1966, Gene and Faye will have their third child, Leslie Ann. The next year, 1966, after Leslie Ann was born, Gene Hackman got the breakout part that he had been looking for. Warren Beatty produced and starred with Faye Dunaway in Bunny and Clyde. Beatty remembered his old friend from his earlier film, Lydiath. With Beatty's help, Gene got the part of Buck Barrow, Clyde's older brother. Estelle Parsons played Blanche Barrow, Buck's wife. For his part as Buck Barrow, Hackman will be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. In 1970, Gene again will be nominated as a supporting actor for the Academy Award for I Never Sang for My Father, about a man whose mother dies and a grieving son is torn between his demanding father and his need to live his own life. Hackman said this movie held a special place in his heart. He only wished his mother had been able to see it. The next year, Gene will win the Academy Award for his portrayal of Jimmy Popeye Doyle in The French Connection. To prepare for the film, he rode with the New York police for over a month. He played the part of a rough police lieutenant that routinely broke the law in order to catch criminals. In 1972, Gene will star with 4 other Academy Award winners, Ernest Borgnine, Jack Albertson, Shelley Winters, and Red Buttons in The Poseidon Adventure, about an aging luxury liner on its final voyage from New York to Athens when it's hit by a tsunami. In 1974, it'll be The Conversation, about a surveillance expert who learns while listening to a young couple's conversation that they might be killed. Gene said he had based his character on his uncle and a fellow Marine that he knew, who probably, by this time, he said, was a serial killer. In 1975, Hackman will reprise his role as Jimmy Popeye Doyle in The French Connection 2. About this time, Gene and Faye bought a home in Montesino. Gene said he loved to buy houses that needed fixing up. He spent the next year and a half working on fixing the house and improving the grounds. In 1977, Hackman will be in an epic World War II movie, A Bridge Too Far. In 1978, Gene will play the villain Lex Luthor in Superman, along with Christopher Reeves and Margot Kidder. Hackman's portrayal of Lex Luthor seems more like a likable con man than a mastermind villain, such as when Luthor tells Superman, "I'll give you dimples," and then turns a machine gun on him, who of course is not even fazed. Then Luthor says to Superman, "The pressure's on you now. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the tunnel." He then turns the flamethrower on Superman, who's still unfazed. And then Luthor says, "This is your last chance, Superman." In the 1970s and 80s, Hackman became interested in auto racing. The highlight of his racing career was a seat in Dan Gurney's All-American Racer GTU Toyota Celica in the 1983 Daytona 24-hour endurance race and Riverside 6-hour race. Gene also won the Long Beach Grand Prix celebrity race. In 1983, Hackman will star in Uncommon Valor, about a retired Army colonel that goes to Laos to search for his son that he believed was being held as a prisoner of war. Gene once stated it was hard to hold the family together, when you're gone for 3 months at a time, and then you come home and start bossing everybody around. Along this time, Gene and Faye separated, although it'll be 1986 before they divorce. 1 year before their divorce, they will sell their Mendocino home. Faye will keep her life private after her divorce from Gene, and she'll pass away on the 26th of April, 2017, at the age of 88. In 1984, Hackman met Betsy Arakawa while at a gym where he was a member and she worked. The couple will date for 7 years. While going with Betsy in 1986, he'll become a high school basketball coach with a checkered past in the film Hoosiers, along with Barbara Hershey and Dennis Hopper. He'll coach a small high school basketball team to win the state finals, one of the best basketball films ever, according to many. In 1988, Gene will be in 2 excellent films. Bat 21, about an Air Force pilot shot down during the Vietnam War. His struggle to escape capture makes for a great war movie. Also in 1988, it'll be Mississippi Burning. Hackman, with William Defoe, played 2 FBI agents investigating the disappearance of 3 civil rights workers. Now this is the real Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwarter. The movie was taken from the True Case investigation. For his performance, Hackman was nominated for the Academy Award. In 1990, Gene began having heart trouble. The doctor suggested a new type of surgery called angioplasty. Although he did well through the surgery, Gene took off work for over a year to recuperate. The next year, in December of 1991, Gene marries Betsy Arakawa, who was from Hawaii. Betsy was trained as a classical pianist, and the couple will eventually move to Santa Fe, New Mexico, to this beautiful home. Betsy will become a businesswoman and co-owner of Pandora's & Company, an upscale retail home furnishing store in Santa Fe. The next year after marrying Betsy, Hackman will be in Unforgiven, a Clint Eastwood film. Hackman plays the part of Little Bill Daggett, a cruel sheriff. He vowed to never be in another violent film again after playing Little Bill. He said the part of Little Bill affected him for a long time, even though Unforgiven won Best Picture and Clint Eastwood Best Director, and Hackman won his 2nd Academy Award for his performance of Little Bill. In 1993, Gene will play General George Crook in Geronimo, an American Legend, played by Wes Studi. Also in 1993, it'll be The Firm, about a young lawyer, Tom Cruise, who gets involved with a Memphis law firm that's being watched by the FBI. Hackman plays a law partner who mentors Tom Cruise's character. Hackman, who knows the skeletons in the closet of the firm, but is still a wannabe nice guy. In 1995, the film Crimson Tide pits the commanding officer of a U.S. nuclear sub, played by Gene, against a Soviet commander. The story parallels the real incident that occurred during the Cuban Missile Crisis. In 1999, Gene co-wrote a novel, Wake of the Perdido Star, about tales of pirates, shipwrecks, and sea adventure. 2 years later, in 2001, Hackman will be a Navy admiral who orders the rescue of a fighter pilot, played by Owen Wilson, after Serbs shoot down his plane in Bosnia. In 2004, Gene and friend Dustin Hoffman will play in their very first movie together, a John Grisham book about a groundbreaking lawyer filing a lawsuit for a widow suing a gun manufacturing company. 2004 will be a busy year for Hackman. First, he co-wrote his 2nd book, Justice for None, where a troubled World War I veteran is on the run from the law for killing his wife and her lover. A female reporter from the Chicago Tribune is not convinced that he's guilty. Also in 2004, Hackman will play a retired president that desires to run for mayor of a small town in Welcome to Mooseport with Ray Morano. This will be Gene's last movie after he failed a heart stress test and his doctor told him that he had to make a change and take the strain off his heart. After writing 3 books with co-writer Daniel Linehan, Gene found his calling as a writer and began writing on his own. with such novels as Payback at Morning Peak and Pursuit. He said he found writing novels was his way to relax. In February 2012, while riding a bicycle in the Florida Keys, Gene was bumped from behind by a vehicle. He was flown to Jackson Memorial Hospital, suffering from body and leg injuries. The actor will recover enough that by October he will slap a much younger man for making snide remarks at he and his wife, Betsy, as they was leaving a restaurant in Santa Fe. The police, after investigating, said the actor was justified.
For years, actor Gene Hackman's doting wife, Betsy Arakawa, would do whatever she could to help keep him healthy, whether it meant wearing a mask everywhere she went or encouraging him to stay fit by riding his bike or doing yoga on Zoom. In late February, the couple was found dead in their New Mexico home, a heartrending end to the life they shared. Arakawa, 65, died of hantavirus, and days later, Hackman, 95, died of heart disease, the New Mexico Medical Investigator's Office revealed Friday. Authorities, working to lay out a timeline of what happened, said Hackman had Alzheimer's disease and may have not realized he was alone in the days before he died. Clues as to what the couple's life looked like before their tragic deaths could be gleaned from their last interactions with loved ones. Close and longtime friends of the couple say they seemed to be in good health at their most recent encounter. "Last time we saw them, they were alive and well," Daniel Lenihan told and then Aaron Burnett last week. Barbara, Lenihan's wife, said she had last seen Arakawa a few weeks ago at a home decor shop the two had opened together in Santa Fe. "They were so delightful to be around," Barbara said, adding how proud Hackman and Arakawa were of each other. "Probably never seen a couple that got along and enjoyed each other so much." Using evidence gathered from their home, authorities pieced together what they now believe happened, answering many of the questions behind what began as a mystery. Investigators believe she died first. Arakawa's last known interactions were on February 11. She had a short email exchange with her massage therapist that morning and later visited a Sprouts Farmers Market, CVS Pharmacy, and a dog food store before returning to her gated community at around 5:15 p.m., Santa Fe Sheriff Adan Mendoza said Friday. After that, there was no other known activity or outgoing communication from her, the sheriff said. Numerous emails were unopened on her computer on February 11, Mendoza said. Arakawa died from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, a rare disease that results from infection through contact with rodents, according to Dr. Heather Jarrell, chief medical examiner for the New Mexico office of the medical investigator. Pills found scattered on the bathroom floor near Arakawa's body were prescription thyroid medication and not related to her death, Jarrell said. Zina, one of the animal-loving couple's dogs, was found dead in a crate in the bathroom near her body. Based on the circumstances, it is reasonable to conclude that Ms. Arakawa passed away first, Jarrell said. What Hackman's days looked like after his wife of more than 30 years left his side has yet to be fully pieced together, but the end came in a matter of days. Hypertensive and atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease took the acting legend's life, likely on February 18, when his pacemaker last recorded his heartbeat, according to Jarrell. The device recorded Hackman was experiencing atrial fibrillation, an irregular heart rhythm. His body was discovered on the ground near the kitchen, with a walking cane and sunglasses next to him, on February 26. Authorities said he was in a very poor state of health. Hackman had advanced Alzheimer's disease, which was a significant contributory factor in his death, and it was possible the actor was not aware his wife had died several days earlier, Jarrell said. Alzheimer's, a brain disorder caused by damage to nerve cells in the brain, begins with mild memory loss and can lead to the inability to carry out daily activities, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The disease, estimated to affect nearly 7 million Americans, was the seventh leading cause of death in the U.S. in 2022, according to the CDC. As people advance in the sequence of their Alzheimer's disease, they become more and more reliant on a caregiver. Dr. Jonathan Riener, medicine and surgery professor at George Washington University, told CNN Sarah Sidner Friday night. It's unclear whether Arakawa was his primary caregiver or if Hackman had other caregivers. If Arakawa was his principal caregiver, she would be responsible for giving Mr. Hackman his medications, for cleaning him, for helping him to the bathroom, and for feeding him, Riener said. With Arakawa's sudden death, one can see how, sadly, that could lead to his death, he said. Other findings paint a grim picture of Hackman's last days. Investigators have found no signs Hackman was communicating with anyone. They also did not find any food in his stomach, which means he had not eaten recently, the medical examiner said. Some questions may remain unanswered. Officials said it is going to be hard to tell if Arakawa was feeling sick in the days leading up to her passing. It is possible she had been ill for weeks before she died, though Arakawa did not appear to be sick or struggling in surveillance camera footage captured on February 11. She was walking around, she was shopping, she was visiting stores, Mendoza said of the surveillance video. My detectives didn't indicate that there was any problem with her or struggle of her getting around. The CDC has been notified of the case of hantavirus authorities said led to Arakawa's death, according to New Mexico State Public Veterinarian Aaron Phipps. Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome does not spread from person to person. Symptoms can take up to 2 months to show up after contact with an infected rodent, often starting with fatigue, fever, and muscle aches that can develop into coughing and shortness of breath within a few days. More than a third of people who develop respiratory symptoms may die from the disease, according to the CDC. Health officials searched the couple's property for signs of rodents, Phipps said. They found the risk of exposure inside the home was low, but they did find evidence rodents had entered other structures on the property. Authorities are also awaiting necropsy results to determine how the couple's kelp, mix, died. Starvation could have been a cause of death, but officials are still unsure, Phipps said, noting that dogs do not get sick from hantavirus. Zina underwent a procedure on February 9, which could explain why the dog was in a crate, according to Mendoza. The couple's other 2 dogs were found alive and had been able to go in and out of the house through an open door, authorities said. As they work to complete a timeline surrounding the high-profile deaths, investigators are still searching Hackman's and Arakawa's cell phones for information that could shed light on their locations or other communications they had before they died. We're pretty close to the timeline, Mendoza said at a Friday news conference, noting the investigation will remain open until a few more loopholes are finalized. I think a lot of the questions have been answered, Mendoza said. We are waiting on the cell phones, but it is very unlikely that the cell phones are going to show anything else. Neither Hackman nor Arakawa had any internal or external signs of trauma, the medical investigator said. Both also tested negative for COVID-19, influenza, and other common respiratory viruses, she said. A postmortem CT examination on Hackman showed severe heart disease, including multiple surgical procedures involving the heart, evidence of prior heart attacks and severe changes to the kidneys due to chronic high blood pressure, she said. A love story spanning 3 decades Hackman and Arakawa met while she was working part-time in a California fitness center, according to a 1989 New York Times Magazine story. Hackman, then 59, had enjoyed 3 decades as a successful actor in Hollywood, while Arakawa was a classic pianist who found her love of music growing up in Hawaii. They share a 2-bedroom adobe house on a wide brown plain outside Santa Fe, the story stated of their residence at the time. He paints and sketches, solitary hobbies, and tools around in one of his 2 pickup trucks. Hackman and Arakawa married in 1991. The pair enjoyed watching DVD That My Wife Rents, We like simple stories that some of the little low-budget films managed to produce, he told Empire in 2020. Barbara Lenihan told the New York Times Arakawa also helped her husband in his literary pursuits, typing up long hand-written versions of his books on the computer, while also assisting with edits and sharing her opinions about the characters. She was very involved with what he did, Lenihan said. She made it very possible for him to do it. Because of their health concerns following the COVID-19 pandemic, friends had seen less of the couple in the last few years, according to Lenihan. Arakawa took measures like masking to ensure her husband wouldn't get sick. Until a year ago, Hackman was still riding his bicycle, and Arakawa had him doing yoga and different things at home on Zoom and trying to stay very fit, she said. Betsy was a wonderful wife. They were very close, and she was a good cook and really, really took good care of him, Lenihan said. They ate very well. He had had a triple bypass, maybe around age 60, and he'd been in really good health since then, and I'm sure she was one of those factors. Daniel and Barbara Lenihan described the couple as very easy people to get along with. When the pair would host the Lenihans at their home, Hackman would often ask Arakawa to play classical pieces on the piano, and she was equally supportive of his accomplishments, Barbara Lenihan said. They loved to travel and were well liked in their community, she said. The couple also shared a love of animals. While Hackman was filming The Replacements in Baltimore in 1991, 2 stray dogs wandered onto the set. Hackman took them to a shelter where one of them was named after him. Later, Hackman and Arakawa adopted the dog named Jean. Daniel Lenihan said he'll remember Hackman as an interesting, funny, very intelligent man, while his wife described Arakawa as clever and witty and fun.
This week, our community lost a giant, and I lost a dear friend, Gene Hackman. I had the pleasure of working alongside Gene on 2 films, Unforgiven and Under Suspicion. And like everyone who's ever shared a scene with him, I learned he was a generous performer and a man whose gifts elevated everyone's work. He received 2 Oscars, but more importantly, he won the hearts of film lovers all over the world. Gene always said, I don't think about legacy. I just hope people remember me as someone who tried to do good work. So I think I speak for us all when I say, Gene, you'll be remembered for that and for so much more. Rest in peace, my friend.